Boss, stay. Apologize.
No!
Apologize now.
I'm Bobby!
The fluorescent lights inside the Rusty Lantern diner buzzed like tired insects that refused to die. It was 2:07 a.m. in Boston, the kind of hour when the world felt hollow and forgotten. Outside, snow clung to the sidewalks in dirty piles. Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee and old grease. Emily Carter wiped down the counter for the third time. There was nothing left to clean, but cleaning gave her something to do. Something to think about besides the stack of unpaid medical bills sitting on her small kitchen table back home. 4 more hours, she told herself. 4 more hours until the end of the graveyard shift. Her wrist ached. Her back ached. Everything ached. Her grandmother, Martha, had been in and out of Mercy Children's Medical Center for months. The prescriptions alone cost more than Emily made in 2 weeks. The insurance barely covered anything. The rent was already late. But Emily kept working. Because quitting wasn't an option. The bell above the diner door jingled. Emily didn't look up at first. Probably another trucker or night shift nurse. Then the air changed. 2 men in dark suits entered first. Not regular suits. Expensive suits. They scanned the room slowly, carefully, like hunters checking the forest before stepping inside. The tired nurse in the corner booth suddenly found her coffee very interesting. The trucker lowered his head. Emily felt it. Fear. The men stepped aside. Then he walked in. Tall. Broad shoulders. Charcoal coat perfectly fitted. Dark hair swept back like he had just stepped out of a private car instead of the freezing Boston night. His face was calm. Too calm. Cold gray eyes swept across the diner and landed briefly on Emily before moving on. Adrian Volkov. Even Emily knew that name. He wasn't just rich. He owned half of Boston's underworld. And holding his hand was a little girl dressed like a porcelain doll. Velvet coat. White tights. Shiny shoes. And an expression of pure rage. "I don't want pancakes," the little girl screamed before they even reached a booth. The sound cut through the diner like broken glass. Emily froze for half a second. Adrian sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Lila," he said quietly, but his voice carried weight. "We are eating. Then we are leaving." "No." Lila stomped her foot so hard it echoed off the tile floor. One of the bodyguards shifted slightly. Emily swallowed.
Coffee?
It was her table.
Chocolate milk for her.
She picked up her notepad and walked over. Her heart pounded so hard she thought they could hear it. "Coffee?" she asked evenly. Adrian looked up at her. Most people avoided his eyes. She didn't. For one brief second, surprise flickered across his face. "Black," he said. "And chocolate milk for her." "I hate chocolate milk." Lila shrieked. Before anyone could react, she grabbed the glass sugar dispenser from the table and hurled it.
Boss, stay.
Time slowed.
Apologize.
The heavy glass
Apologize
object
now.
flew through the air. It smashed against the wall inches from
Boss,
Emily's
stay.
head.
Apologize.
Glass shattered.
Apologize
Sugar
now.
exploded like white snow, coating Emily's hair, her uniform, her shoes. The diner went completely silent. One bodyguard stepped forward slightly. Adrian stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Lila. That is enough. I hate you." Lila screamed, tears filling her eyes. "I want mommy." The word hit the air like a gunshot. Adrian's face changed instantly. Something painful flashed in his eyes. Then it was gone. "Apologize," he ordered, voice low and dangerous. "Now." "No." Lila crossed her arms. The most powerful man in Boston stood there, and his 7-year-old daughter defied him. Emily brushed sugar off her shoulders slowly. She should walk away. She should call her manager. She should stay quiet. Instead, she stepped forward. She walked right past the bodyguards. She stopped at the booth. Then, what? She slapped her hand down on the table. The sound cracked through the silence. Lila jumped. Adrian froze. Emily leaned down so she was eye level with the girl. "Do you know how hard it is to get sugar out of polyester?" she asked seriously. Lila blinked, stunned. "And no. It's very hard," Emily continued calmly. "And I have 4 more hours left on my shift." The bodyguard stared in disbelief. Emily didn't even glance at them. "You're going to sit there," she said firmly. "You're going to drink the chocolate milk I bring you. And you're going to draw me a picture on this napkin." Lila sniffed. "And if it's a bad drawing," Emily added, narrowing her eyes slightly, "I might tell the cook to put broccoli in your pancakes." Lila's mouth fell open. "You can't do that." "Try me." Silence. Adrian stared at Emily like she was speaking another language. "Broccoli ice cream is gross," Lila muttered. "Disgusting," Emily agreed. "So, do we have a deal?" Lila hesitated. Then slowly, she nodded. Emily straightened up and looked at Adrian. And for you? She asked casually. Just the coffee? He blinked once. Yes, he said quietly. Just the coffee. Emily walked away toward the counter. She could feel his eyes on her back. 20 minutes later, the diner was the quietest it had been all night. Lila sat in the booth, quietly drawing a crooked cat on a napkin. She sipped her chocolate milk without complaining. Adrian watched in disbelief. Emily returned with the check. Lila pushed the napkin toward her. Here, she said softly. Emily studied the drawing carefully. Strong whiskers, she said seriously. Very nice. No broccoli today. For the first time Lila giggled. It sounded rusty. And used. Adrian reached into his coat and pulled out a money clip. He peeled off 5 crisp $100 bills and placed them on the table. Emily looked at the stack. Then at him. The bill is $12.50. Keep the change, Adrian said calmly. For handling the situation. I don't take charity, Emily replied. The bodyguard, Victor, stepped forward immediately. Watch how you speak. Adrian lifted his hand slightly. Victor stopped. It's not charity, Adrian said. It's payment. For what? Emily asked. Talking to her like a human being? She tore the check from her pad and placed it down. $12.50. Keep your blood money. The diner gasped quietly. Victor stiffened. You know who you're talking to? He growled. Emily shrugged lightly. I live in Boston. I'm poor. Not stupid. Silence. Then something unexpected happened. Adrian smiled. Slowly. Not amused. Intrigued. He removed one $20 bill and placed it on the table. Thank you, he said simply. He took Lila's hand. They walked toward the door. Before stepping outside, Lila looked back over her shoulder. She waved. Emily waved back. The bell jingled again. The door closed. And the Rusty Lantern Diner felt normal again. But something had shifted. Because for the first time in years, someone had told Adrian Volkov to sit down. And he had listened. The hallway of Emily Carter's apartment building smelled like damp carpet and old smoke. The light above her door flickered weakly as she climbed the stairs after her shift at the Rusty Lantern Diner. Her body felt heavy, like someone had tied weights to her arms and legs. She just wanted sleep. But when she reached her door in the South End district, she stopped. A bright orange paper was taped across it. Final notice. Her stomach dropped. Eviction. 2 months overdue. Emily stood there staring at it for a long moment before peeling it off slowly. Her hands trembled, but she forced herself to breathe. Inside, the apartment was small and cold. The heater barely worked anymore. The kitchen light was on. From the living room came a wet, rattling cough. Emily rushed in. Her grandmother, Martha, sat in her worn armchair, wrapped in 2 blankets. Her white hair was pulled back loosely, and her skin looked pale under the lamp. Hi, sweetheart, Martha wheezed, trying to smile. Long night. Emily knelt beside her immediately. You're coughing again. It's just the weather, Martha said softly. Emily glanced at the coffee table. 3 empty prescription bottles. Her throat tightened. They wouldn't refill them, Emily whispered. Not until we pay the balance. Martha waved a frail hand. Don't worry about me. Emily stood up quickly and walked into the bathroom. She turned on the shower full blast so the water would drown out the sound of her crying. She pressed her hands against the sink and stared at herself in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes. Sugar stains still in her hair from the diner. $70 left in her bank account. Eviction notice. Unpaid hospital bills. She slid down the wall and cried quietly. A knock on the door shattered the silence. Emily froze. It was too early for the landlord. She wiped her face quickly and stepped into the hallway. Another knock. Slow. Controlled. Emily opened the door halfway. And her breath caught. Victor stood there. The massive bodyguard from the diner. He filled the entire doorway. Instinctively, Emily tried to shut the door. Victor placed one large hand against it, not pushing, just holding it firm. Miss Carter, he said calmly. You are not in trouble. I didn't tell anyone anything, Emily rushed out. About the diner. I didn't. You are not in trouble, he repeated. His voice was steady, almost polite. He reached into his coat. Emily flinched. Instead of a weapon, he pulled out a thick ivory envelope sealed with dark red wax. Mr. Volkov requests your presence. Emily stared at the envelope. I have 2 jobs, she said weakly. I don't need. This is not like your jobs, Victor interrupted. He handed her the envelope. Open it. Emily's fingers shook as she broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of heavy paper. Position, live-in governess. Client, the Volkov family. Salary, $10,000 per week. Full medical coverage. Housing included. Emily's vision blurred. $10,000 per week. She swallowed hard. This isn't real. It is, Victor said simply. Why? Because you handled Miss Lila. Emily's heart pounded. I just talked to her. You did not fear her father? Victor said quietly. Emily stared at the page again. $10,000 would erase the eviction. It would refill the prescriptions. It would pay off Mercy Children's Medical Center. As if reading her thoughts, Victor spoke again. The hospital balance has already been paid. Emily's head snapped up. What? Mr. Volkov does not make empty offers. Emily felt dizzy. You already paid it? Yes. Her knees felt weak. You can refuse, Victor added. If you say no, we leave. You never hear from us again. Emily looked toward the living room. Martha was coughing again. The sound was deeper this time. Emily closed her eyes. Morality. Fear. Danger. Survival. How long? She asked quietly. As long as needed. What are the conditions? You will live under Mr. Volkov's roof. You will protect Miss Lila. At all times. Emily hesitated for only one more second. Let me get my coat. The black SUV was silent as they drove out of Boston and toward Weston Heights. The houses grew larger. Gates appeared. Security cameras. Private roads. They stopped in front of towering iron gates. They opened slowly. Beyond them stood Volkov Manor. It looked less like a home and more like a fortress. Gray stone walls. Tall windows. Guards at the perimeter. Emily stepped out of the vehicle. Her worn shoes felt small against the marble entrance. Inside, the foyer was enormous. A chandelier sparkled overhead. The floor shone like glass. A butler led her down a hallway lined with oil paintings. Double doors opened. The library smelled like leather and firewood. Adrian Volkov stood near the fireplace. No coat this time. Dark suit. Hands behind his back. You came, he said. $10,000 tends to be persuasive, Emily replied, lifting her chin. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. It is hazard pay. For what? For surviving my daughter. Emily crossed her arms. She's not dangerous. No, Adrian said softly. She is grieving. Silence settled between them. I have gone through 4 governesses in a month, he continued. One left crying. One left injured. One attempted to sue me. And you think I'm different? I know you are. Why? Because you did not try to control her, he said. You challenged her. He walked closer. You are afraid of me. Yes, Emily answered honestly. Good. Courage is acting while afraid. He placed a contract on the desk. You will live here. You will follow my rules. And the most important rule. He looked directly into her eyes. You protect Lila with your life. Emily's heart raced. She thought of Martha breathing easier. She picked up the pen. Where do I sign? Just as she pressed the pen to paper, the doors burst open. A tall blonde woman strode in wearing an elegant dark green dress. Her expression was sharp and cold. Natalia Sokolova. She looked Emily up and down slowly. This is the replacement? Natalia scoffed. She looks like she slept in a subway station. Emily straightened. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. Natalia, he said calmly. This is Miss Carter. Lila's new governess. Natalia laughed softly. She won't last a week. She stepped closer to Emily. If Lila doesn't scare you away, Natalia whispered, I will. Emily met her gaze without flinching. Nice to meet you too, Emily said sweetly. I like your dress. It almost distracts from your personality. Adrian turned his head slightly, hiding a smile. Natalia's face flushed red. You. That's enough, Adrian interrupted smoothly. Emily signed the contract. The pen scratched across the page. It was done. Adrian extended his hand. Welcome to Volkov Manor. When do I start? Emily asked. Adrian's gray eyes locked onto hers. Immediately. Emily did not sleep much her first night at Volkov Manor. The room assigned to her was larger than her entire apartment back in the South End. The bed was soft, the sheets smooth, the air warm. But the silence of the house felt different. It was not peaceful silence. It felt heavy, watchful. At exactly 6 in the morning, Emily sat up. If she was going to survive in this house, she needed to move first. She dressed simply and tied her hair back. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw someone who did not belong in a mansion. Then she squared her shoulders. She would belong. The kitchen was massive, steel counters, hanging copper pans, a refrigerator bigger than her bathroom. The smell of strong coffee filled the air. Behind the main island stood the head chef. He was tall, thin, and serious. His dark hair was slicked back perfectly. He chopped herbs with frightening precision. "You must be Miss Carter," he said without looking up. "Yes. And you are?" "Chef Armand." His tone was cold, measured. "Staff breakfast is at 7. Oatmeal and fruit." "I'm not here for staff breakfast," Emily replied calmly. Chef Armand stopped chopping. Slowly he looked at her. "And what are you here for?" "Lila." A faint scoff escaped him. "Miss Lila does not eat breakfast." "Why?" "She throws breakfast." Emily folded her arms. "What do you usually serve her?" "Organic egg whites. Quinoa porridge. Seasonal fruit reduction." Emily blinked. "She's 7. Chef Armand lifted a brow. "This is a refined household." Emily walked past him toward the refrigerator. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Making breakfast." She pulled out white bread, butter, and a block of cheddar cheese. Chef Armand looked horrified. "You cannot possibly." "Trust me." She heated a skillet and spread butter thickly on the bread. The sizzle filled the kitchen. The smell of melting butter and cheese slowly took over the air. Chef Armand stopped protesting. The scent was irresistible. By the time Lila wandered into the dining room, dragging her stuffed rabbit, the smell of grilled cheese had reached her. Natalia Sokolova was already seated at the long dining table, sipping black coffee. Adrian sat at the head of the table, reading a file. "I'm not hungry," Lila muttered, climbing into her chair. "Good," Emily said brightly, walking in with a plate. She placed the golden, crispy grilled cheese sandwich in front of Adrian. "This is for you." Adrian looked up, surprised. "For me?" "Yes. Very spicy. Not for children." Lila's eyes narrowed instantly. "I can handle spicy." Emily tilted her head thoughtfully. "I don't know. It's very dangerous. Extreme cheesiness." Natalia rolled her eyes. "This is absurd." Lila grabbed the plate before Adrian could respond. She took a large bite. Her eyes widened. Cheese stretched from the sandwich in a long string. She chewed quickly, then took another bite. Adrian slowly lowered his file. He watched his daughter eat. No screaming. No throwing. No tears. Just eating. Natalia set her coffee down sharply. "This is greasy nonsense," she snapped. "Grilled cheese for breakfast? She will be lethargic all day." Lila paused mid-bite. "It's good," she said defensively. "Chef," Natalia called coldly, "remove this and bring fruit." Emily froze for half a second. This was a test. If she obeyed Natalia, she lost Lila. If she disobeyed, she challenged the house. Emily calmly picked up the salt shaker. "I think it needs a little salt," she said lightly. She sprinkled a tiny amount over the sandwich. "Perfect." The silence at the table was sharp. Natalia's face darkened. "I gave you an order." Emily did not look at her. "I work for Mr. Volkov." Natalia turned to Adrian. "Are you going to allow this?" Adrian took a slow sip of his coffee. "If Lila likes it, she eats it," he said calmly. Natalia's lips tightened. "She needs discipline." "She needs breakfast," Adrian replied. Lila continued eating, now glaring at Natalia like she had just won something important. Emily poured Adrian fresh coffee. "You're manipulative," he murmured quietly. "I'm practical," she whispered back. Natalia stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This woman will ruin structure in this house," she said sharply. "She improved it in one morning," Adrian responded. The tension between them thickened. Natalia leaned closer to Emily. "There is a gala on Friday," she said coldly. "The Boston Children's Relief Gala. The entire city's elite will be here. Let us see how long you last under real pressure." Emily met her gaze. "I've handled worse than elites," she replied softly. Natalia's jaw clenched. She left the dining room without another word. Lila finished the last bite and wiped her mouth. "Can I have another one?" she asked quietly. Emily smiled. "We'll see." Adrian stood from the table. "You handled that boldly." "I don't respond well to bullying," Emily answered. His expression shifted slightly. "The gala will be heavily secured," he continued. 300 guests. Politicians. Businessmen. Rivals. You do not let Lila out of your sight. "I won't." "It is not a social event for us," Adrian added. It is exposure. Emily nodded. I understand. He studied her for a moment. She is starting to trust you. Emily glanced at Lila, who was licking cheese from her fingers. Good. As Adrian left the room, Natalia watched from the hallway, her eyes sharp and calculating. And Emily knew. The war inside this house had only just begun. By Friday evening, Volkov Manor looked nothing like it had that morning. The long driveway was lined with luxury cars. Strings of warm lights glowed along the stone walls. Security guards stood at every entrance, their earpieces visible beneath perfectly styled hair. Inside, crystal chandeliers reflected light across polished marble floors. The Boston Children's Relief Gala had begun. Emily stood in her room staring at the garment bag hanging from the wardrobe. A soft knock sounded at her door. From Mr. Volkov, a staff member said, handing it to her earlier that afternoon. She unzipped it slowly. Inside was a gown. Midnight blue silk. Simple, elegant, flowing like water. The fabric felt smooth beneath her fingers. It was modest but powerful. She swallowed. This was not a uniform. When she finally stepped out of her room, the hallway seemed quieter somehow. She walked carefully down the grand staircase. The ballroom below was filled with guests in expensive suits and glittering dresses. Champagne glasses clinked softly. Laughter floated through the air. Adrian stood near the center of the room speaking to a senator. He looked up. And stopped. His gray eyes followed her descent slowly, taking in the blue dress, the calm posture, the quiet strength in her steps. For a moment, the conversation around him faded. You look, he began, then cleared his throat. Appropriate. Emily gave a small smile. That is the goal. Stay close to Lila, he said quietly. The patio doors are the weakest access point. I understand. Across the room, Natalia stood in emerald green watching. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she observed Adrian watching Emily. The music swelled. The party officially began. Lila wore a pale blue dress with sparkly shoes hidden beneath the long skirt, just as Emily had promised. She sat with a small group of children near an enormous ice sculpture shaped like a swan. Emily remained nearby, scanning the room. She didn't drink. She didn't socialize. She watched. That was when she noticed him. A waiter. Tall. Thin mustache. Carrying a silver tray of appetizers. At first, nothing seemed unusual. But he wasn't serving anyone. He circled. Watching. Sweat gathered at his temple despite the cool air. Emily's stomach tightened. She stepped closer to Adrian. The waiter near the ice sculpture, she whispered. Adrian glanced casually without turning his head fully. All catering staff were vetted. He's not serving, Emily said. He's hunting. Before Adrian could respond, the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the ballroom. Gasp. Screams. Glass shattering. Lila. Adrian's voice thundered. Emergency lights flickered faintly. Emily didn't hesitate. She ran. She memorized the layout earlier. She knew exactly where the ice sculpture stood. A beam of white light cut through the darkness. Not from a phone. From a weapon. The suspicious waiter stood near Lila. No tray now. A silenced pistol in his hand. Goodbye, he muttered coldly. Lila stood frozen in fear. The gun lifted. Emily grabbed the nearest object, a heavy silver serving tray from a nearby table. She ran full speed. Just as the man pulled the trigger, she swung. The tray slammed into his head with a loud metallic crack. The shot fired wildly, shattering the ice sculpture into glittering shards. The assassin staggered but did not fall. He turned, furious, and backhanded Emily across the face. Pain exploded in her cheek. She hit the floor hard. The gun aimed at her now. Stupid girl, he snarled. Emily saw the black circle of the barrel. Bang, bang, bang. Two deafening shots echoed through the room. The assassin jerked backward. Red spread across his chest. He collapsed. Adrian stood behind him, gun smoking, expression carved from stone. Emergency lights flickered fully on. The ballroom was chaos. Guests crouched under tables. Some screamed. Some were frozen in shock. Adrian rushed forward immediately. Emily, he said sharply, dropping to his knees beside her. Where are you hit? I'm fine, she breathed, though blood trickled from her split lip. Lila crawled out from under the table, trembling. She didn't run to her father. She ran to Emily. She threw her arms around her tightly. Emily wrapped her arms around the little girl, shielding her from the sight of the body on the floor. It's okay, she whispered softly. I've got you. Adrian stood, scanning the room. Victor appeared at his side. Breach at the west gate, he reported urgently. It was coordinated. Adrian's jaw tightened. Lock down the estate, he ordered coldly. No one leaves until I say. He turned back to Emily and Lila. His eyes softened for a brief second. You saved her, he said quietly. That's my job, Emily replied, still holding Lila. No, Adrian said. That was more than a job. Natalia stood across the room, pale but composed, watching everything carefully. Security escorted guests out quickly. The music had stopped. The glamour of the evening had vanished. In its place stood something darker. Adrian walked toward the center of the ballroom. Find out who sent him, he commanded. His voice carried easily through the silence. I want names. The air felt heavier. Lila refused to let go of Emily. Her small fingers gripped the blue silk fabric tightly. Don't leave me, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere, Emily promised. Adrian stepped closer, his presence strong and protective. His hand hovered briefly near Emily's cheek, careful not to touch the injury. The way he looked at her had changed. Not employer. Not employee. Something deeper. The family bond had shifted. It had strengthened. And everyone in that ballroom could feel it. The night that was meant to show power and prestige had turned into a declaration of something else entirely. Someone had tried to kill his daughter. And now, Boston would pay. The drive to the Vermont mountains was long and silent. The black SUV cut through winding forest roads, headlights slicing through the darkness. Snow lined both sides of the road like white walls. No other cars. No other lights. Just trees and quiet. When they finally reached the safe house, it did not look like a fortress. It looked like a simple log cabin hidden deep in the woods. But appearances meant nothing. The windows were reinforced. The walls were steel beneath the timber. Motion sensors blinked faintly along the perimeter. Adrian stepped out first, scanning the area carefully. Inside, he said. Emily followed, holding Lila's hand tightly. Inside, the cabin was warm but plain. A fireplace flickered softly. The air smelled like wood and smoke. Lila was exhausted. Her small fingers still clung to Emily's sleeve. Can you stay in my room? She asked quietly. Emily looked at Adrian. He hesitated only a moment. Yes, he said. That night, Emily lay awake in the twin bed beside Lila. The wind howled faintly outside. Lila slept restlessly, clutching her stuffed rabbit. The world felt far away. For the first time since the gala, there were no flashing lights. No screaming guests. No gunshots. Just silence. Morning came slowly. Adrian was already outside, chopping wood when Emily stepped into the kitchen. He had traded his suit for jeans and a flannel shirt. The physical work seemed to steady him. Emily found pancake mix in the pantry. Soon the cabin smelled like syrup and bacon. Lila stood on a chair beside her, giggling as she tried to flip a pancake. It's harder than it looks, she said. Adrian entered, brushing snow from his boots. He stopped in the doorway. For a moment he simply watched them. Lila with flour on her nose. Emily laughing softly. The scene looked almost normal. Adrian stepped closer. Did any land on the floor? He asked. Only 2, Emily admitted. Acceptable, he said calmly. Lila smiled up at him. The moment felt fragile. Then, the satellite phone buzzed sharply on the counter. The laughter stopped instantly. Adrian picked it up. Speak. Victor's voice came through, low and urgent. We traced the breach. Adrian's face hardened. Tell me. There was inside access. The event coordinator broke first. He admitted someone gave him the floor plan. Who? Pause. Natalia. The word hung heavy in the air. Emily's hands froze on the spatula. Adrian's jaw tightened. Continue. The money trail leads to Bellini Imports. Matteo Bellini funded it. Silence. Then. Understood, Adrian said quietly. He hung up. The warmth inside the cabin felt colder now. Emily stepped closer. Natalia? She asked softly. Yes. She lives in your house. Adrian did not respond immediately. She wanted control, he said finally. Bellini wants territory. Lila looked between them, confused. Who's Bellini? She asked. No one you need to worry about, Adrian replied firmly. Back in Boston, in a dark warehouse, Victor stood over a bruised man tied to a chair, the event coordinator from the gala. You should have said it sooner, Victor growled. I didn't know she would send a killer, the man sobbed. She just wanted access. Access to a child, Victor replied coldly. He stepped away and made the call that confirmed it all. Back at the cabin, Emily began packing a small bag. If Natalia tracked us once, she might. She stopped. Something felt wrong. Lila sat on the floor near the couch, holding her stuffed rabbit. Can you sew his ear later? Lila asked. Emily knelt beside her. Let me see. She turned the doll over. The stitching along its back looked uneven. No. Did someone fix this recently? Emily asked carefully. Aunt Natalia, Lila said. She said she fixed his heart. Emily's stomach dropped. She pressed gently against the stuffing. Something hard. Not cotton. Not fabric. Her fingers trembled as she tore open the seam. Inside the doll was a small black device. A blinking red light. Adrian, she shouted. He rushed over instantly. Emily held up the device. It's a tracker. The red light blinked faster. Adrian crushed it under his boot. Down, he yelled. At that exact moment, the front window exploded. Glass shattered inward as a sniper round tore through the wall. Emily screamed. Adrian tackled both her and Lila to the ground. Another shot ripped through the cabin. They're here, Adrian growled. Outside, engines roared. Multiple vehicles. Doors slammed. Boots hit snow. How many? Emily whispered. Too many. Adrian handed her a small revolver. Take Lila to the panic room in the basement. Lock it. Do not open it unless you hear my voice. Emily stared at the gun in her hand. Point and shoot, she asked, her voice shaking. Shoot until it's empty, Adrian replied firmly. He kissed Lila's forehead. Go. Gunfire erupted outside. Automatic weapons. The walls shook. Adrian kicked the front door open and fired back into the snow. Emily grabbed Lila's hand and ran. The basement stairs felt endless. Bullets slammed into the walls upstairs. She shoved Lila into the hidden panic room and locked the heavy steel door behind them. The noise above was terrifying. Gunfire. Shouting. Glass breaking. Lila buried her face into Emily's chest. Daddy will win, she whispered. Emily held her tightly, heart pounding. Upstairs the firefight raged. And the war that began in a ballroom had now followed them into the mountains. The panic room was small, reinforced with steel walls and one heavy door. A single overhead light hummed faintly. The air smelled like cold metal. Lila sat curled in the corner, hugging her stuffed rabbit tightly. Her small body trembled every time gunfire thundered upstairs. Emily knelt beside her, gripping the revolver Adrian had placed in her hands. Her palms were slick with sweat. Stay here, Emily whispered, brushing Lila's hair away from her face. No matter what you hear. Don't leave, Lila pleaded softly. Emily swallowed hard. I'll be right back. She unlocked the steel door carefully and slipped out into the basement stairwell. The sounds above were fading now. The roar of engines had stopped. Only distant groans and the faint crackle of broken wood remained. She climbed the stairs slowly. The cabin was unrecognizable. The living room looked like a battlefield. Furniture overturned. Glass shattered everywhere. The walls were splintered with bullet holes. The smell of smoke and gunpowder filled the air. Emily stepped over a fallen body, her heart hammering painfully in her chest. Then she saw him. Adrian was slumped against the kitchen island. One hand pressed against his side. Blood seeped between his fingers, dark against his flannel shirt. Standing over him was a massive man with a scar carved down his cheek. He held a pistol aimed directly at Adrian's head. Adrian had no weapon in his hands. His eyes were steady, defiant. Say goodbye, the assassin muttered. Hey. Emily's voice tore through the room before she could stop herself. The assassin turned. For a split second, surprise flickered across his face. Emily raised the revolver with both hands. Her arms shook violently. She had never fired a gun before. She thought of Lila downstairs. She thought of the way Adrian had looked at her that morning while she flipped pancakes. She pulled the trigger. The recoil jolted through her entire body. The bullet struck the assassin in the shoulder. He roared in pain and stumbled back, dropping his weapon. It was enough. Adrian moved like a wounded predator. He lunged forward, tackling the man to the ground. From somewhere beneath his jacket, he drew a hidden knife. The struggle was brutal but short. Adrian drove the blade into the assassin's neck with precise force. The man went still. Silence fell. Adrian collapsed backward, breathing heavily. Emily dropped the revolver and rushed to him, falling to her knees. Adrian, she whispered, panic rising in her throat. Adrian. He looked up at her, pale but conscious. You missed, he said weakly. I hit him, she replied, tears filling her eyes. Just not perfectly. Close enough, he murmured. She pressed her hands over his wound, trying to slow the bleeding. His hand lifted slowly and cupped her cheek. There was blood on his fingers. "You came back," he said quietly. "You were going to die," she whispered. "And you disobeyed a direct order." Her breath trembled. "I couldn't let you die." Something shifted in his expression. The cold steel in his eyes softened. He pulled her closer suddenly, his other hand gripping her waist. Before she could think, his mouth crashed against hers. The kiss was fierce, desperate, filled with adrenaline and relief. It tasted like smoke and blood and survival. Emily gasped but didn't pull away. For one suspended moment, the world disappeared. Then, footsteps thundered outside. The front door burst open. Victor rushed in with armed men behind him. "Boss," he shouted. He froze briefly at the sight of the dead attacker and Adrian on the floor. "We secured the perimeter," Victor continued quickly. "They're all down." Adrian released Emily slowly and forced himself to sit upright. "Help me up," he ordered. Victor moved forward carefully, supporting him. Emily stood beside them, shaking but steady. "You shot one," Victor observed, glancing at the injured assassin. "She did," Adrian confirmed. Victor looked at Emily with something new in his expression. "Respect." Adrian turned back to her. "You were supposed to stay in the panic room. And you were supposed to stay alive," she replied firmly. For a brief second, silence passed between them. Adrian reached for her hand. "You are not staff," he said quietly but clearly. Victor and the other men heard it. "You are not hired help." Emily's heart pounded. "You stood between my enemy and my life." He squeezed her hand gently. "You are family." The words hung in the air like something sacred. Victor nodded once, understanding the weight of that declaration. Adrian's gaze darkened as he looked around at the destroyed cabin. "They tracked us," he said coldly. "They sent an elite squad." His voice hardened completely now. "This is no longer retaliation." He looked toward the broken doorway, toward the forest beyond. "This is war." Emily followed his gaze. Her hands still trembled from firing the gun. But something inside her had changed. She had stepped into this world. And she had fired back. The war did not explode loudly in the streets. It moved quietly, carefully, ruthlessly. Within days of the attack at the Vermont safe house, Adrian Volkov's network began working in silence. Every contact, every bank connection, every informant was activated. Natalia Sokolova had made one mistake. She believed blood would protect her. It did not. Victor stood inside a dimly lit office in Boston, a laptop open on the desk in front of him. Numbers filled the screen: wire transfers, offshore accounts, shell corporations. "Trace it again," Adrian ordered. "It's clean on the surface," Victor replied. "But not deep." The financial analyst beside him zoomed into a smaller subsidiary account. "There," the analyst said quietly. "A transfer. Large. Disguised as event coordination fees. Origin, Bellini Imports." Adrian's expression did not change. "Matteo Bellini," he said softly. The rival crime lord had stayed in the shadows for years. He had been patient. Natalia had been desperate. Together they had formed something dangerous. But paper trails did not lie. The transfer continued to another account, owned by Natalia Sokolova. "Lock it down," Adrian said calmly. Within hours, federal authorities received anonymous documentation, evidence packets, transaction records, encrypted communication logs. Adrian did not need to touch Natalia himself. He simply needed to remove her shield. The investigation moved quickly. The Boston District Attorney's Office issued warrants. Financial crimes. Conspiracy to commit murder. Organized crime collaboration. Natalia was arrested at Volkov Manor. She did not scream. She did not cry. She walked out of the estate in a dark coat, chin high, cameras flashing. But when she saw Adrian standing at the top of the stone steps, her composure faltered slightly. "You would turn on family?" she said coldly. "You turned first," Adrian replied. "You chose an outsider over blood. You tried to murder a child," he said evenly. Natalia's eyes flicked briefly, searching for weakness. She found none. The trial began 3 months later. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the benches. Flashbulbs went off each time Natalia entered the room. She wore neutral colors and calm expressions, but tension clung to her posture. Emily sat behind the prosecution table, hands folded tightly in her lap. She had never imagined herself inside a courtroom like this. When she was called to testify, she stood slowly. "State your name," the prosecutor said. "Emily Carter." You were present at the Boston Children's Relief Gala? Yes. And what did you observe? Emily spoke clearly. She described the suspicious waiter, the gun, the attempt on Lila's life. She described the tracker found inside the doll. She described the attack at the Vermont cabin. She did not exaggerate. She did not soften anything. Natalia watched her with quiet fury. You were newly employed by Mr. Volkov at the time? The defense attorney asked. Yes. And you stand to benefit financially from his protection? Emily held steady. I stand to benefit from truth. The courtroom grew quiet. When financial experts testified, the evidence became impossible to ignore. The transfer from Bellini imports. The coordination payments. The offshore accounts. Natalia's calm mask cracked. She whispered harshly to her attorney. Her fingers trembled for the first time. After weeks of proceedings, the jury returned. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder. Organized criminal financing. Collaboration with a known crime syndicate. The judge did not hesitate. 3 consecutive life sentences, he declared firmly. Natalia stood frozen as the words echoed. She turned once toward Adrian. But he did not look at her. He did not acknowledge her existence. To him she was already gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around. Mr. Volkov, any statement? Adrian faced the cameras calmly. We do not speak the names of ghosts, he said evenly. Meanwhile, Matteo Bellini's empire began collapsing quietly. His financial channels were frozen. His import businesses seized for investigation. Associates arrested. Within weeks, Bellini disappeared from public view. Whether he fled or was dismantled from within did not matter. His power was finished. Back in Boston, something changed. Adrian did not expand aggressively. He stabilized. Territories were reorganized. Rival factions were absorbed peacefully. Violence dropped. Charitable donations increased publicly. Mercy Children's Medical Center received a significant endowment. The Boston Children's Relief Gala announced expanded funding. The press began shifting its tone. From crime lord, to businessman, to benefactor. Emily noticed the change most clearly. Security tightened, but fear inside the house eased. Lila laughed more often. Volkov Manor felt less like a fortress and more like a home. One evening, Adrian stood by the window overlooking the city skyline. Boston glittered beneath the night sky. It's done, he said quietly. Emily stepped beside him. All of it? She asked. Yes. She studied his profile. You didn't destroy the city, she observed. I don't need to, he replied calmly. Control does not require chaos. Below them, Boston moved as usual, cars flowing through streets, lights blinking in high-rise buildings. But beneath that surface, power had shifted. Natalia was gone. Bellini was dismantled. And Adrian Volkov stood alone at the top. Not because he crushed everything in his path, but because he removed what threatened his family. The war had ended, and Boston belonged to him. The new pediatric wing at Mercy Children's Medical Center gleamed under the afternoon sun. Glass walls reflected the Boston skyline. A large silver plaque stood near the entrance, covered by a dark blue cloth waiting to be unveiled. Cameras flashed. Reporters adjusted microphones. City officials lined up near the stage. It was the dedication ceremony of the Volkov Children's Recovery Wing. Emily stood beside Adrian at the front of the crowd. She wore a soft cream dress, simple, elegant. No heavy jewelry. No loud colors. She didn't need them. Adrian stood tall in a dark tailored suit, calm and controlled as always. But today felt different. This was not a gala. This was not a power display. This was public change. Lila stood between them, holding a bouquet of white lilies. Her hair was neatly braided, her expression confident instead of guarded. When the hospital director stepped to the microphone, the crowd quieted. We are honored, he began, to dedicate this wing to families who need hope the most. This contribution will fund life-saving treatments for children across the region. Applause followed. The blue cloth was pulled away. Volkov Children's Recovery Wing. Dedicated to courage and second chances. More applause. More cameras flashing. Emily felt a strange wave of emotion rise in her chest. She remembered the eviction notice. The unpaid prescriptions. The diner at 2 a.m. And now she stood here. Adrian leaned slightly toward her. You look overwhelmed, he murmured. I'm thinking, she replied softly. About what? How strange life is. He almost smiled. Reporters surged forward as the ceremony concluded. Mr. Volkov, one called out. What inspired this donation? Adrian answered calmly. Every child deserves protection. Another reporter shifted the focus. Miss Carter, how does it feel to stand beside Mr. Volkov today? Emily hesitated only a second. It feels earned. Murmurs rippled gently through the crowd. One reporter raised her hand sharply. Mr. Volkov, any comment on Natalia Sokolova's sentencing? The atmosphere changed slightly. Cameras leaned closer. Adrian's expression turned cold. We do not speak the names of ghosts, he said evenly. No anger. No hesitation. Just finality. The reporter lowered her microphone. Lila tugged on Emily's hand gently. Mom, she whispered, looking up at her. The word froze time. Emily looked down. Lila's eyes were bright. Certain. She had said it naturally. Not forced. Not unsure. Adrian heard it too. His hand tightened slightly around Emily's waist. Emily knelt in front of Lila. Yes. Can we get ice cream after this? Lila asked seriously. Emily blinked back sudden tears. Only if it has broccoli in it. Lila gasped dramatically. Gross? The small circle of reporters nearby chuckled. Adrian shook his head lightly. That joke will never die, will it? Never, Emily replied. The press slowly dispersed. Officials moved toward private conversations. The ceremony shifted into polite networking and quiet celebration. But the real moment had already happened. Adrian guided Emily toward the edge of the terrace overlooking the hospital gardens. You handled this well, he said quietly. I used to wipe diner tables at 2 a.m, she replied. This feels easier. He studied her face carefully. You could have stayed there. I could have, she agreed. You didn't. Emily looked out over the city. I didn't choose power, she said slowly. I chose people. Adrian's voice softened slightly. That is why you are here. Below them, children ran through the hospital garden courtyard. Nurses guided families through the glass doors of the new wing. The city of Boston stretched beyond, loud and alive. Emily thought about the night at the Rusty Lantern Diner. A thrown sugar dispenser. Chocolate milk. A drawing of a crooked cat. It had seemed so small. But that moment had changed everything. She hadn't planned to step into a world of power. She hadn't planned to become part of something larger than survival. Yet here she stood. Not as a servant. Not as hired help. But as partner. As protector. As family. As queen. Adrian slipped his hand fully into hers. The press caught the image, him steady and controlled, her calm and unafraid, Lila between them smiling. It would be on the front page tomorrow. The Mafia king and the former waitress. But only they knew the truth behind it. Power had not bent her. Money had not bought her. She had earned her place by standing in front of a gun. And by standing her ground at a breakfast table. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is not the one holding authority. It is the one willing to protect others without asking for anything in return. And so the story that began with spilled sugar and stubborn pride ended with something far stronger. Family. If you were Emily, standing in that diner, offered a life filled with danger and power, would you have taken it? Or would you have walked away? The city moved on around them. But for Adrian Volkov and the woman who changed his world, Boston would never be the same. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more interesting stories.